Hello everyone, this is Kevin from Maths Heuristics and TeachUp. In this video, I'll be discussing some of the questions from PSLE 2020 math paper. So here's the disclaimer. Okay, if you are the parent or the student viewing this before PSLE 2020 is over, and you feel that viewing this video will affect your child's or your morale and confidence for the remaining papers, please switch off the video now. Okay, the last thing I want for you is through this discussion you get affected and that affects your science and mother tongue and higher mother tongue papers. Okay, because this video is meant for the eager parents and children who want to discuss the questions and are mature enough by now to be aware of its consequences and to be able to accept them whatever it may be. Okay? So if you do not want to be affected by this, please switch off this video now. Okay? So second disclaimer here is that the questions here were from accounts from students. Now the exact phrasing of the question, numerical values, diagrams, names and background information may not be identical to the exact questions that came out in today's paper. Alright, so in case you're wondering, some people may be asking, where do you get this question from? It's from my students. Okay, they may not have memorized every single detail and I didn't want to probe too much either. So this is from one of my students from TeachUp. She was saying I predicted 2 PSLE question concepts. I don't think I predicted it. We just do our best to prepare them in the best way possible. Okay, this one was a question 6, $3, and similar concepts were tested. And even this question over here, and this was from our spatial visualization book. Okay, maybe if I can pull it out for you to see. Okay, let me just turn to the exact page first. So as you can see, as you can hear, all the WhatsApp messages coming in, those are our excited students who are happy to report that they did pretty well for this paper. Found it. Yeah, so this is from page 91 from the spatial visualization ebook and also the hard copy. And even rates came out too. So back then, around May, Mrs. Linda Cole, my boss, Mr. Sunny Tan, and I, we had a little talk about rates. Because speed was removed this year, we predicted that rates would come out and take its place since speed is a part of rate. Okay, then also got one student saying, I'm very confident my paper 2 I'll get full marks because I checked very thoroughly. So I was saying to him, I'm very happy for you. Now make sure you do Mrs. Cole proud too, and Mr. Hanson. So this is just me. The way I communicate with my students is pretty informal, but at least it still commands respect. Then some of them were telling me the MCQs that I went through with them also came out for today's paper, and they particularly like my memes. And yeah, I'm really excited for when they get the correct answers. Okay, so this is where I'll start discussing the questions. So if you do not want to be affected, okay, please turn off this video now. Okay, if you're viewing this after your last paper, feel free to continue viewing. Okay, so this is from today's PSLE paper, 2nd of October 2020. Okay, so over here, I guess, here's my guess. I say this is my guess because she just drew this diagram to show me what some of the tricky questions were. So my guess is that the following diagram is formed by the following rings. Okay, let me just zoom in there for you. Whose external diameter is 9 cm. And the width between them is 1 cm. Okay, the width between this here and this here is 1 cm each. So part A asks, what is the distance from the top of the first ring to the bottom of the fourth ring? Okay, so this question is more like a patterns kind of question. So to deal with this, you want to see that for the first ring that you put on here, I think the question would also have mentioned that the rings are all tightly linked together at these corners and they are touching each other. Okay, so this first ring itself would have a length of 9 cm. Correct? The second ring over here, when you put this on, first it will go through the first ring. Now because there's 2 cm over here in total, the remaining distance from here to the bottom of the second ring would now be 7 cm. Okay, and if we apply a similar reasoning to the third ring, you will see that from this point to the bottom of the third ring, this is also 7 cm. And now, if we are to extend it down to the bottom of the fourth ring, from this point, this would also be 7 cm. So for part A, this is rather straightforward. For part A, we can just say that the distance from the top to the bottom will be 9 plus 3 copies of 7. So that will give you 30 cm. Okay, let me just make sure I don't write on my big head. Okay, then for part B, part B says that the distance between the top of the first ring to the last ring is 198 cm. So how many the distance between the top of the first ring to the bottom of the last ring is 198 cm. How many rings were there? So to deal with this, you are now given the distance that from here to the bottom of the last ring. This is 198 cm. Okay, so for part B, right, like what I always mention in my Facebook lives, you want to list out first your first ring and the lengths, the number of rings and the number of lengths you will obtain. and try to see if there's a pattern to it. Okay, for the first ring, the length is 9 cm. When you have two rings connected like this, there will be a +7 over here. When you have three rings over here, you will have a +7 over here to give you 23. Or when you have four rings, you plus another 7, you will have 30 over here. So what I always mention is that you want to try to rewrite this in another way that you can use the figure number to calculate. So in this case, it's the number of rings that you can use. So over here, this is 9. This is 9 plus 1, 7 cm. This can be written as 9 plus 2, 7 cms. This can be written as 9 plus 3, 7 cms, and so on. So now, when you go all the way down until you have a length of 198, we can say that this 198 is formed by 9 plus something times 7. Okay? And to find this out, you can draw a little part-hole model here. You have a 9 and several 7s that form up a total length of 198. So based on this, what would you do to find out the number of rings? This will be 198, remove the 9, and divide it by 7 first. So this would give you 27. But is 27 the answer? No. Okay, look at how the number of 7s are related to the number of rings that you have. Okay, the number of 7s you have is always 1 less than the number of rings. So to find out the number of rings, we have to add 1 back to this. So 27 plus 1 gives you 28. And that settles part B. Okay? So if you've been viewing my Facebook Lives, you will be able to see that this is a common difference pattern. And in this question, it's a rather creative one because it doesn't tell you explicitly that it follows a certain pattern. Okay, at least based on what I see. Whether or not there was a table, that one I'm not aware at this point in time. Okay. So in case you're wondering what time it is now, it's Friday, 2nd of October, 4:34 p.m. Okay, then the last question in paper 2, she forgot the name, I guess. X spent 1/6 of her money on a dress and 2 blouses. The dress costs 3 times as much as 1 blouse. She spent 3/4 of her remaining money on a watch, and the watch costs $220.50 more than the dress. Part A, what fraction of her money did X spend on 1 blouse, and what was X amount of money at first? So you can see that I didn't edit what she wrote to me. Okay, this is purely from the account from some of my students. Okay, so I'll just leave it as that. She also doesn't want her name to be mentioned, so I'll leave it anonymous. Right, so to deal with this, let's allocate the units first. Now, X spent 1/6 of her money on a dress and 2 blouses. Correct? So they got a dress and 2 blouses, which cost her 1 out of a total of 6, the remainder of 5. Okay, you have 1 block one blue block. Okay, just imagine this. If you want, I can draw a model in parallel. Okay, so this was spent on the dress and 2 blouses. Okay, then later on she spent 3/4 of her remaining money on a watch. So from here, if you pull this down, you can split this into 4 equal portions, and 3 of them was spent on the watch. Okay, so in the branching portion, this is what it will look like. On the watch, remainder, and the total here. This is 3 out of a total of 4, remainder here is 1. Okay? So now that we've set up the whole overview, we have to be aware that this refers to her total amount of money. Okay? Then over here, a dress and 2 blouses refers to the number of items that were bought. She bought 1 watch. This also refers to your number of items. And over here, the second statement refers to the values of the items. Okay, so if we are to draw a model to represent the dress and a blouse, right? If we are to compare their values over here, this is how it would look like. Okay, so if we say that if we use 1 unit to represent the cost of 1 blouse, then 2 blouses will be represented by 2 units. And the dress cost would be represented by 3 units. Which means that one of these blue blocks here, okay, maybe I should use a different color for this. Which means that one of these blue blocks here will represent a value of 5 units. Correct? So when this is the case, you can see that all of these can be changed to, can be multiplied by 5 units to give you 25 units and 30 units here in total. Okay, so the 4 of these red blocks will have the same amount as these 25 units here. Correct? And as far as I like to work with whole numbered units, if you try to do that, you would see that you have to multiply this by 25 again, multiply this by 4 again, and so on. So instead of doing that, what I would do instead is to work with decimal units directly. 25 units divided by 4 would give you 6.25 units. So this is a more direct approach. Okay? So now that we've set up everything ready, we can proceed to answer the questions. Part A asks, what fraction of her money did X spend on one blouse? So you can see that even the question mark is missing. But I'll just leave it as it is. What fraction of her money did she spend on one blouse? So on one blouse, she spent 1 unit out of a total of 30 units. We can answer part A directly over here. Okay? And then, what was X amount of money at first? X amount of money at first would be represented by these 30 units over here. Okay? So how do we proceed to find the value of 1 unit then? So we can compare the difference in value between the watch and the dress. So if the dress, since the dress costs 3 units and the watch costs 18.75, the difference in the number of units will represent the difference in value. So 1 unit will just be 220.5 divided by 15.75. So that will give you 14. What was X amount of money at first? X amount of money at first is this 30 units here. So 30 units would just be 30 times 14. Give you 420. So the answer for part B will be $420. Okay? So anyway, if you would like to discuss, was PSLE 2020 math paper this year difficult? Was it easy? Do let me know in your comments below. Okay, so if you are watching until here, please note that I already made this disclaimer. Okay, this video is meant for eager parents and children who want to discuss the questions and are mature enough to be able to handle the consequences. Okay? Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Okay? See you all soon. Bye-bye.